what I thought I would do
Yeah,
is sort of talk about uh, what it was like for me to go to the 415 offices and sort of
great.
try to paint a picture a little bit. Um, I was living then, well, Translator had moved to San Francisco from LA, and we had all been living together in uh, kind of a flat with a friend's flat. I was sleeping on the floor. This might even be in your book. But then I finally moved out. We all kind of went our separate ways. And I was living in the Tenderloin, which is uh, uh, a part of San Francisco, and with a lot of lower income stuff. And I loved it. I was in this building, kind of not a flop house, but an apartment building. The bathroom was down the hall. You shared it with the other tenants.
Oh
And
boy.
when I moved in, the person who lived there before me clearly had used a bunch of hairspray constantly, because that smell never went away. And I remember um, the the guy who was the manager of the place. He would get all the mail for all the tenants and then distribute it. And behind his door, he kept a baseball bat for protection, and that kind of a place. And I had a subscription to Rolling Stone at the time, and there was a bar down the street called the Edinburgh Castle, really cool Irish pub, and that I went to, and or Scottish pub, I guess, and went to. I was having a drink there, and the landlord came in, and he sat next to me with a copy of Rolling Stone. He had been reading my Rolling Stone, and it was the first issue that Translator was ever mentioned in.
Oh.
And he sat down. He said, "I didn't know I had rock stars living in the building." And then he gave me my mail, and I said, "Oh, yeah." um, and uh, from that was where I was living when we were making our first album, the Heartbeats and Triggers record. And I would go to the 415 offices, which were on Mission and 16th in the Mission district of San Francisco. Um, and I loved going in there. It was great. I'd walk there, and you'd go in, and it was like a movie of an indie label. It was kind of chaotic, and kind of everything was by the seat of its pants, but also very focused and very into the music. And there'd be Denise doing the PR over here, and Chris Nab would be over here. And I remember Howie Klein in his office, behind his desk, there was a big map on the wall of, I guess, the United States. And on top it said, all bands on tour all the time. And then it had little push pins in different cities where each band was color, coded, where they were on their tour itinerary. And I thought, that's so cool. And Translator was one of those pins, and I thought, this is I'm so happy that this is happening. That I'm part of this. And downstairs there was a place, not part of the record company, called the Compound, but in the sort of local, people on the street, we all called it the Punk Mall.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It was like stalls and stands, and someone was selling clothes. There's a little record company, a little record store that had fanzines, and probably there was an espresso bar or something. It was that kind of a place. And I would hang out there a lot. And the Roxy Theater was across the street, which was a art house cinema. And that's where I'd see all these great Herzog films and all those great movies. And also down the street was a place called Cafe Picaro, which had just opened. And I'd go in there and hang out after being at 415 Records, and get coffee. And they had this incredible pan-grilled fish that opened in 1982. And I looked it up the other day to see if I was dreaming it, but it's still there. And so
Really?
the Punk Mall is not, now
Right.
it's probably very, very expensive apartments or something. But then everything was very like stripped down. And then the Automat, which was a recording studio where we recorded the first two Translator records.
Right.
Well, we recorded the first one at our rehearsal studio, the basic tracks on a mobile truck.
Yes.
But we finished it at the Automat with David Kahn. And I could walk there too. And so I remember I wrote a song in that apartment, that kind of funky apartment. There was a song on the first record called When I Am With You. And I had been writing it, and it was kind of like I couldn't figure out how to do it. I hadn't played it for the band yet. And it was like, should it be like clipped little eighth notes, like things were back then, or should it be something else? And I put on the radio, and Pete Townsend, there was a recording of him doing Won't Get Fooled Again, just acoustic somewhere, some solo acoustic version. And it was incredible. And I was like, that's it. It's a big strummy acoustic song, of course. And so on the record, it's a big, endless acoustic guitar that I overdubbed. And so that was exciting. That was all part of that period. But that's kind of what I wanted to do, is paint a picture of what it was like in San Francisco then. It was because we played all these different clubs, the MAB, the I-Beam, the La Disc, all these different clubs, Berkeley Square, Stone, incredible places. And 415 was kind of the hub, at least for our band and other bands, obviously on the label. It was like a real hub. And Howie Klein was such a music guy. And even though by the time we signed with them, they were part of Columbia, or CBS Records, it was called then.
Yes.
Part of Columbia. It still had that indie thing. Like I'd go to 415. It didn't feel like I was going to corporate record. Like when we were in New York and went to the CBS building, that was like a whole other thing.
I bet.
But Howie's thing was like very stripped down, chaotic, but he knew where everything was, and it was all under control, and he was always on the phone. I remember that he's always working the phone, because there was no email then, there was probably no fax then, you
Probably not.
Or letters, there was no it was a way different time,